want everyone to know that we are recording this meeting. Okay, sorry about that. We had somebody text in that they were struggling to get on. So hopefully this will assist with that. And they will be able to join us shortly here. But thanks for being here. I'm going to quickly jump over to sharing a screen just so that I stay on track and for today's workshop, and that way I don't keep everybody here too long. I know everybody is super busy, and so I appreciate you tuning in. So I'm going to go ahead and hop over here, and sorry for that pause. There we go. Okay, perfect. So if you are joining, hopefully you know why you're here, but in case maybe somebody sent this to you as something they thought you might be interested in, I'll just kind of give a brief the elevator speech of what today is about. Today's program is really geared towards assisting those that are thinking about returning back to school. So if you have, maybe you started a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree last year, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, today's conversation is about how we are here to support you if you are wanting to finish that program. Yeah, so I'll kind of just jump in. That's kind of the base level. I think we all are aware that by gaining educational credentials, whether that's a certificate, which is usually a 1 year or less program, an associate's degree, which is typically a 2-year program, or a bachelor's degree, typically a 4-year program, really leads hopefully to additional opportunities in life, and just different maybe job options, maybe a job promotion, maybe just some freedom for you personally. And I've talked to a lot of people who just are wanting to finish simply out of just something they want to do for themselves. So hopefully that is where we can assist today. So I should introduce myself. Thanks for being here. My name is Angela Wolf-King. I am the College Access Manager here for the Montana University System under the Commissioner of Higher Education's office. My job is unique in that it's split between 2 large federal grants. One is Gear Up, gaining early awareness early awareness for undergraduate programs, which works with mostly high schoolers and middle schoolers, getting them ready for launching into that 4-year program. And then the other grant that I help support is the Montana Educational Talent Search, which is where this program is housed under. And based on that grant, which I'll talk a little bit later at the end of today's discussion, allows us to support students specifically with additional resources who are wanting to go back to school. So this is just a little bit about me, but higher ed has always had my heart in some ways, and I absolutely love working with students, so I'm super excited to talk about you guys with this today. One thing I'll point out before I go too much further is that on the bottom of each page here, you'll see the Montana Educational Talent Search logo, which I expressed is it's kind of the host for this program, but also here's a link to our College Access website. There's some good resources on there, everything from application to scholarship to FAFSA, to different events that we're putting on it. Even the first page of ours has a calendar of different things going on. So I just put it on there. You're welcome to use it. You don't feel like you have to, but if I forget to bring that up and it's showing up on every screen, now we know. And I see we have had a couple people jump in. Welcome, thanks for being here. We just got started, and I will reiterate that this is being recorded just so that for those that may need to watch it later or maybe want to come back and revisit some of the topics that were discussed. So I just want everybody to know. Our MUS College Access Team does have our own YouTube channel. We share our workshops and webinars on there, and we'll also post it on our website. So hopefully that's helpful. And I apologize, you're jumping into the middle of kind of a PowerPoint screen, but I'll turn it back off once we get to the end of the presentation. But my goals for today are really to talk about three main topics. One, applications. If you're thinking about making that first step, applying is really really the first step beyond just thinking about it. So we'll talk about applications, we'll talk about FAFSA, and we'll talk about scholarships. And I just realized I'm gesturing a ton with my hands that nobody can see, but there you go. So, excuse me. So when it comes to applications, there's a couple of things I want to make everybody aware of, and then we'll have a kind of a recap screen after each main topic point. But one thing that is new this year, it just launched this September, is called the Apply Montana portal, which is through the MUS or the Montana University system. But it just started in September. And the easiest way to explain this is it is simply an application portal. So if you are thinking about applying to any of the MUS schools, and for those of you who may not be aware of what that means, that's any school that would fall under the University of Montana umbrella or the Montana State University umbrella, or the community colleges. So if you're thinking about MSU Northern or UM Western or maybe Helena College, or maybe you are thinking about Flathead Valley, what this does is it's a simple portal. You can log in, it's free to use. And rather than doing multiple applications, you can apply everything in one step. So if you are thinking about maybe more than one campus to apply to, this can save you a little bit of time. The other, I think probably the greatest part for this group is that these are free applications. So now with having Apply Montana, all of our applications to the MUS schools are free. There's no limit on how many schools that you can apply to. So if you're interested or just want to kind of check out to see what everybody has to offer, you're welcome to do that too. And like I put at this bullet point, it feels kind of cheesy, but it is pretty quick and easy. I have heard everybody say that it's taken from 6 minutes to about 20. So, but pretty short and simple and sweet, and hopefully makes that first access point a little bit easier. One thing I will say about Apply Montana is that because it's new, there are some things on it that are still being built, for lack of a better word. So while it's free and available to everybody, if you graduated more than probably 3 to 4 years ago, it may not work for you in that some of the questions in there, I don't know how to explain this clearly, and I don't want to discourage you from using it, but it's really built at this point for high school students. They are adding kind of the transfer piece and adult learner piece next, and they're working on it right now. But if you're finding like, oh, these questions seem to be kind of odd for me, feel free to give me a call. Just because you can't use Apply Montana doesn't mean that we can't get your application waived to a different campus. So I don't want that to be a barrier for you. The other thing that I want to mention this year is that we have had incredible participation and support from the campuses across Montana who are not part of the MUS. So that would be our private colleges, our tribal colleges. So if you are thinking about one of those institutions have overwhelmingly waived their application fees this year too, mostly due to COVID, but I think is something that I want to highlight and make sure students are taking advantage of. The other thing when it comes to applying is check with, if you're planning to apply to the school that you attended previously, let's say 2 years ago you started at MSU Billings and due to life had to stop after a few semesters and are wanting to restart back at MSU Billings, check back in with them because your application may look shorter. It may the application fee may automatically be waived. It's just worth having that conversation and making that initial connection with an admissions office. The other thing I wanted to put on here is that schools are offering winter sessions. A lot of the schools within the MUS started or decided to do a condensed semester this year, so that everybody is done at Thanksgiving. So, and with that, a lot of them are offering a winter session or a condensed semester throughout December and January. So if you even are thinking like, wow, I would just love to jump into this, even starting as early as a winter session might be a great option for you. And that could also just be a single class if you just kind of want an ease of transition back in, or maybe you want to do a full credit load. That would be up to you. But I just want to make sure that's there, because it's kind of a new thing this year due to the COVID scheduling for the campuses. Before I jump into this next screen, I will just pause a second and say, if you have any questions as we go through, feel free to type them into the chat box. Those get populated to me either on the screen or on my phone, so I'd be happy to answer those too. I'd hate to be rambling on and you're like, oh, I just want to ask this question. So a little bit of a recap on applications. One is that it's always best to apply early. Oh, we have a chat, hold on. Oh, good. And I say that because you can always defer it later if you need to. That's an easy process on the admission side. And I think from a student standpoint, from a person who's worked on a campus and now who's worked here, the one thing that I always encourage students is that if you can give yourself as much time as possible to kind of get these things done and do them slowly, and it just takes some of that anxiety away. Then like, oh my gosh, the semester starts next week, I got to get this done quickly. It's always best to apply, and you can apply up until like a year in advance. So right now, I know we were just talking about the winter semester, but you could be applying for winter. You could be applying for spring start, which would be in January for most schools. You could be applying for next summer, or you could be applying for next fall. So whatever you think is going to be best for you, but I would highly suggest doing the application always earlier rather than later. And also it lets that campus know like, oh, great, this student is thinking about coming back. We want to make sure that we're giving that resource, those supports out, and keeping that communication flow for you all. So I would do that. I'll get off my soapbox there. Two is if you're applying to that same institution, make sure you check with them, because things like application materials. So you're not, if you've already applied to MSU Billings, you're not going to need to resubmit a test score or resubmit a high school transcript. So just make sure that you have that communication with them. If you're applying to a different institution, well, I'm going to back up. We'll get there in a second. Once you've applied anywhere, you can ask for what's called I put it in quotes because every school kind of calls it something different, but a transfer recap. And what that'll do is give you a breakdown of the classes that you've taken previously and let you know how they are then transitioning into the future program you're thinking about completing. So you could see like, oh, 2 years ago, I took biology, that's still going to transfer over to this school as biology, etc. And so you should know after you apply how many of your classes are transferring and exactly how those, not only are those classes transferring, but how they're transferring to your new program if you're selecting a different major. For example, let's say 5 years ago, you started as a wildlife biology major at UM. You took 3 semesters of classes, but now you're thinking about going to MSU Northern to do criminal justice. It'll show how those 3 semesters at UM are then transferring over to MSU Northern. And a lot of times what that'll give you is a nice snapshot of how much time that you have left on your future campus. And that sometimes I find is really helpful with students, that they have an understanding of a timeline of what they have left to complete. So if you are thinking about a new institution or even the one that you've been to, advocate for yourself, ask for that transfer form, whatever your school is going to call that, so that you understand how your previous work and how your future work will look. If you're attending a new institution, you'll most likely need official transcripts from a previously attended school. So same like that last conversation, it's possible that If you're transferring from MSU Northern and you're trying to transfer to Carroll, Carroll may request an official transcript from MSU Northern. Just be prepared for that. Sometimes transcripts have a fee associated with them, sometimes not, but talk to the admissions office at each campus. They will help you kind of navigate that process, or you can reach out to us if you need assistance or help advocating for yourself with those documents. And lastly, I mentioned this in a previous slide, but if you graduated in the last 3 years, you should be able to use Apply Montana. If you're having questions with it, just let me know. But again, hopefully next year when we have this workshop, I'll be able to say it's available to anybody, regardless of age, regardless of when you graduated high school. But like I said, it's a work in progress. We're just happy to have it working this year, and I think it'll be a great addition for all of us moving forward. So I'm going to make sure I don't have anything coming through. Okay. So next screen is, let's talk about financial aid and specifically the FAFSA. And I'll bring that up because we have a big event starting next week. I'm going to give just a brief update of what FAFSA is for those that may not know. I was quizzing my own partner the other night. He thought the first F of FAFSA, one, he didn't realize FAFSA was an acronym. This is a guy who has several degrees and has gone to school for a very long time. So I was kind of blown away that he didn't know what FAFSA actually stood for, but that's okay. But FAFSA is an acronym. It stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And where you may have heard the term FAFSA previously, or you hear it in the news, is typically gets lumped in a conversation of student loans and student debt, which are both very real and something to be educated on. But what I want everybody to know on this call is that FAFSA is more than just student loans and more than just student debt. It is a way for a lot of folks to pay for school. And I'll talk about some different ways that the FAFSA here in a second helps make that possible. But a couple other quick bullet points. If you've completed it before and submitted it before, your future FAFSA should be relatively short. Hopefully you've, I'm backing up. A couple of years ago, the Department of Education enacted a new process with FAFSA called the FSA ID. It's an ID, it's kind of just like a username password that you'll make for FAFSA. If you've done a FAFSA like 10 years ago, you most likely won't have an FSA ID, and that's okay. It's an easy process and again, a free process to make one. But the one thing with FSA ID is write it down somewhere and keep it in a safe place that you'll know where to access that. If you lose it, it's okay, but based on some federal guidelines, it can take up to 48 hours to get back into your FAFSA portfolio, and sometimes you just need things done a little bit quicker than that. So there's my pitch about the FSA ID. But going back to the second bullet point, if you have completed it before, it should be relatively simple. You'll go back in. If you need to change address or personal information, you can put that in there, but it should be relatively straightforward. If you are thinking about applying for this year, that FAFSA is available. The FAFSA for students starting next fall, the 2021 fall, is also available. So if you are thinking about starting prior to next fall, whether that's winter, spring, or summer, you're going to do a FAFSA for 2020. And if you're thinking about starting next fall, you're going to do a FAFSA for 2021. I know that's a little bit funky. If you have questions, you can email me. I'm going to give my email and personal work cell phone number at the end. Let me know. I'm happy to walk you through that. I know federal dates and things get a little bit wonky, but the FAFSA for any point in the next year is open for students. And the other thing I want to really highlight is that you never have to accept anything. So I think when people assume like, oh, I'm going to fill out this federal document, I am signing something that I am going to take something. And that is not true. All the FAFSA really does from a basic standpoint is determine actually what you can pay out of pocket to attend school. What happens is that the Department of Education uses your tax return And essentially, it really looks at 5 lines of a tax return. And based on that, income, assets, retirement plans, those kinds of things, it will determine this cute number that financial aid offices call an EFC, which is an expected family contribution. That number is what they, again, expect that you can pay out of pocket. Now, I'll be honest, some people feel like that number is a little inflated, but frequently that number does not equal what it costs to go to an institution, whether that's a university or a college. And that's where the financial aid offices are there to help kind of give you a better picture of other things that you may qualify for to help fill that gap between what you can pay and what it actually costs to go to school. I don't want to go too far in the weeds into financial aid, but I do think that it's important, and I want people to understand that with your FAFSA, you could qualify for other things besides loans, and you could qualify for grants and loans and simply choose just to take the grants and never to take the loans. Just because you do FAFSA does not mean that you ever have to take out a student loan if you don't want to. But one thing, like I put on the bottom here, is don't leave dollars on the table. If you don't do the FAFSA, you will never know if you qualified for a certain scholarship, if you qualified for a certain grant that is required that you complete that document. So there's my pitch for FAFSA. I think that it's worth doing. On the Department of Ed's website, they will say that the average person takes 24 minutes. I think for somebody who's doing it for the first time, that's a little bit fast. But if you're a returning student and returning to FAFSA, that might be true for you. But if it's your first time, be prepared for an hour to complete it. And then if it's much shorter, then you can just celebrate with your extra time. But I think it's worth doing. The other reality of FAFSA is that it brings a lot of anxiety out in individuals. And I think part of that is because it's this federal document, feels kind of scary. 2, it's paying for school, which already brings some anxiety with it. Everybody knows that college isn't free. And so thinking about, oh my gosh, I've got all these other things going on. How am I going to pay for this too? That drums up some additional anxiety, but I promise you that you can get through it, and we are here to help if you need that. And that kind of brings me to this slide. Next week is our big push for FAFSA completion week across the state of Montana. So what we will have is every night next week, November 16th through 20th, it's dawning on me that I didn't put the actual time of the event on here, so my apologies. But it is on our website, it's on all of our social media. And I'm telling you that it's here. I promise that it'll exist. But next week, the 16th through the 20th, every night from 5 to 7, we've partnered with all the financial aid offices in the state of Montana. So tribal colleges, community colleges, private colleges, and the MUS to host this. So each of their offices will staff these breakout rooms via Zoom each evening between 5 and 7. So there's a Zoom link. It's available out there, like I said, on our website, on our social media. You just have to click on it. You do not have to register for a night. You can come to multiple nights if you want, but the goal is of these nights that we will put you in a breakout room with a financial aid professional to help you complete the document and or answer any questions that you might have about financial aid and the FAFSA. Hopefully that's clear. Let me know if you have any questions about that. But one thing that typically has happened in the past pre-COVID is that the different financial aid offices throughout the state host FAFSA completion nights. I know here in Helena College and Carroll College typically host one, at least the one at Helena College, and then at the different high schools, just to help families and students complete that document. This year with COVID, things are looking a little bit different, but we still wanted to make sure that people had that personalized experience and they had a live experience to be able to answer any questions and to have somebody that can provide some at that moment feedback as when they're completing the FAFSA. One thing I'll highlight on here too is that we have a December 1st deadline in the state of Montana. And what that means is that each of our schools has declared that December 1st is when they would love to have all the FAFSAs submitted for students who are thinking about attending next fall. The reality is not everybody will complete and submit their FAFSA by December 1st. But if you are a student who thinks I might qualify for a grant, I might qualify for work study, and we'll talk about what those mean here in a second, I highly encourage you to do it by then. It just gives you the best opportunity for the best financial aid package at the school that you're thinking about. That being said, you can complete the FAFSA up until you are in school, frankly. So if you're just thinking on, man, maybe I'll do the winter semester and I'm going to start here in a couple of weeks and I haven't done the FAFSA, that's okay. You can still do it. You can still submit it, and that school can still provide you feedback as to what kind of different things you may qualify for. So December 1st is certainly the priority deadline for next fall, but it is something that you can complete at any time. So hopefully, if you're thinking about doing it, you can join us next week. We're going to try to make it exciting and fun, and not scary. So here's our financial aid recap. I've tried to do bright colors throughout this to kind of keep it lighthearted. But overview is that there are multiple different ways to pay to go back to school. One is your money. Maybe you have some savings if you're unlike me, or maybe you're planning to work through your time. Maybe you've got a job and you're able to kind of do a part-time thing or a full-time thing, and you're going to pay for it that way. That's great. But you may need grants, and if you don't know, grants are free money that you don't pay back. Some grants are based on income, and some grants are based on other funky things. I'm going to try to think of a quick example. I worked for an institution that we were in the state that the institution was at was low on career and technical educators. And so students who were thinking about going into that degree, they gave grant money to encourage people to complete that. So it wasn't based on income, but it's kind of based on an extra special circumstance. But it is free money. But grants, again, you've got the asterisks there. That is something that would require FAFSA completion for you to be able to receive. Loans, we've talked about that. There are different kinds of loans, but mostly what we're talking about, if you're doing the FAFSA, is a federal loan. And there are two types of those for students. And the one thing I will tell you is that if you're thinking about taking out a loan now through the Department of Ed, at least the interest rate is like all-time record low. So that is excellent. And just so you know, when you're thinking about a federal loan through the Department of Ed, those are something you don't have to pay back until you graduate, unless you were to stop again, then they'll request that you start paying on that. But typically, they're not due until a student graduates, and it's usually 6 months post-graduation that the first loan payment will start. And lastly, scholarships, and we'll talk about that here in a second. Scholarships, I put the asterisk because sometimes require the FAFSA and sometimes don't. Your institution that you're thinking of attending may have a FAFSA requirement in order to be eligible for certain scholarships, and some maybe not, especially your localized scholarships. If you're working, maybe I'm thinking Costco because it's on my list to do this afternoon, but Costco I know gives scholarships to their employees or children of their employees. So some of those localized or privately owned things will not require FAFSA, but some potential university or college scholarships may. So that's why it should get like a hat asterisk or something. All Montana higher education institutions, colleges, and universities will have that priority one deadline. When you complete the FAFSA, each school will provide you with a financial aid package. Hopefully this is consistent to what your experience was before, but that is a federal law that every school provides a student with a financial aid packet or package if they have applied and done the FAFSA. And what this will do is it again will show your EFC, what your FAFSA reported, and then it will show additionally what that specific institution may be able to offer you beyond what your FAFSA provided. Maybe that's a scholarship in the science department. Maybe that is a scholarship specific for returning learners or adult learners. Maybe it's a specific scholarship for students with children, etc. But that will show, and really it gives you kind of this large number sheet of here's what it costs to go to Flathead Valley Community College. Here's what we expect you to pay out of pocket based on your FAFSA. Here's additionally what FECC can offer you. And here's a snapshot of what your finances are going to look like for the following year or the following semester. And lastly, I want to highlight, because I've talked to a lot of students recently and in the past who when I ask, oh, okay, this is great, you have a plan. Have you thought about how you're going to pay for this plan? I'm going to do work study. Okay, great. Did you do the FAFSA? No, not yet. Just remember, work study requires that a student complete a FAFSA. If you're unfamiliar with the term, work study is a great option. However, it is something that students typically have to qualify for. So some students will qualify and some students won't, but if you do, work study allows you to work for your institution. There's typically a variety of different employment options that the school will have, and rather than getting an hourly wage check every few weeks or every month, part of that will be applied to paying off tuition. If you're like, oh, that sounds great, I hope I qualify for work study, just know some people don't, and that's okay too. If you still are wanting to work on your campus or at the school you're thinking about going to, I can't think of a school that doesn't allow for student employment. So just remember that that's available. That can be everything from office assistants to TAs, which are working in a classroom to assist a professor, all the way to food service and everything in between. Student employees are typically great employees, and schools are usually very happy to have them. So different ways to pay for school. Okay, we'll keep moving on. I know financial aid is nobody's favorite, but take a deep breath. You're doing great. I thought I'd put a nice yellow screen here after we talked through financial aid. And again, these are kind of complicated topics. I don't want to overcomplicate them because I really just want to highlight, like, you're doing a few steps at a time. You're doing an application document, then you might do a financial aid document, and we'll go from there. But I think it's great. Again, just want to highlight, it's a great time to go back to school. You should just applaud yourself for even thinking about it. And we are here to help if you need that assistance. So lastly, I'll check my time, make sure I'm not babbling too long. Good, we're doing good. Is scholarships. Like it says, first bullet point, scholarships are a great way to pay for school. But one thing I'll highlight is that they can take time and planning to complete. There's nothing worse than being like, oh, I was going to apply for scholarships and now all the deadlines are passed. So just something to think about. Give yourself some foresight here. Oh, I'm going to give. Oops, sorry guys, let me back up. There are some institutional scholarships, so that would be things that will come directly from the school you're thinking about attending. I put MSU Carroll on here. And again, some may require that FAFSA to be eligible. One thing is that most scholarships will have a spring deadline. As I'm going to jump to the last bullet point and then come back, but I was on UM's looking at their student portal. So the bigger schools will all have what's called a scholarship portal, which is kind of great. It's essentially this document that houses all of their scholarships in one location, so you don't have to jump around to different websites or different sites off of their website in order to find what their scholarships are and what the deadlines are and the requirements. So they will have a portal, and I noticed that UM's, MSU's, I saw what at Western, all of their portals are already open for students who are thinking about starting next August 2021. So because I saw a few of them, I'm assuming that most of them are opening right now, if they aren't already open. Of those scholarships, most of them will have early spring deadlines. Schools love to give out their money early and fast. So that's why It's great you're tuning in now. I would say most of the scholarships I have seen have a March deadline, which means you'll need to be admitted and applied for that scholarship by that time. Now you have plenty of time to do that, but I just want, time goes fast. Sometimes I feel like I'm in a time warp. So again, just things to think about. Other things to know is that a lot of times the scholarships follow the traditional academic calendar. So while you're thinking maybe I want to start in the spring, a lot of the scholarships may not be applied to your account until next fall. Just remember that. But that doesn't mean that you can't apply for them now, and then come the following semester, you have this nice little financial cushion. So that's always just kind of a bummer for students that are starting either in the spring or summer semesters, but hopefully then once the fall kicks in, you'll have some scholarship. One bullet that I didn't put on here that I'm now thinking that I should have is that outside of the scholarship portals, where should you be looking? There's a couple of places that come to mind. One is MCIS, if you're not familiar, is the Montana Career and Information System. They house state scholarships on there. That would be a quick just Google search. The second is Retire Montana, has a lot of scholarships for students, and they keep a really comprehensive page on their website. So I'd encourage you to look at that. The other thing too is don't hesitate to reach out to your financial aid folks on the campus for scholarship assistance, or, you know, like, hey, I'm thinking about coming back. I'd love to apply for some scholarships. Do you have any suggestions on where I might be able to locate some? They should be able to assist. And frankly, I've heard of students just say, Googling scholarships for yada, 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 and seeing what comes up. But I would start with your school, see what their scholarship page looks like. Start with anything that might be local to you, whether that's a current employer or past employer, or a program maybe your community has. And then if you want to kind of expand a little bit further. One thing that happens a lot with scholarships is writing. There's a lot of writing requirements. And I know for some of the students I've worked with, that is a cause for some additional anxiety. So we just received this flyer this morning. We'll have it on our website because, oops, sorry, it's not clickable here. But UM's Writing Center is putting on a writing workshop specific for scholarships. Again, free. I know how much everybody loves to be on a Zoom webinar, do a Zoom workshop. But these would be a great opportunity if that is something that fits in your schedule and something you think you might need. I'm noticing that some of the times at least are maybe outside of the traditional work hours. And they may be recording these and putting them on their website too, if the time doesn't work exactly well for you. But I wanted to highlight that, and because yeah, sometimes if you haven't been writing essays for a while, getting back into that could feel a little overwhelming. But this might give you some good prompts and some ideas on how to go forward with that. Okay, other things of how we can help. So our office, like I mentioned at the beginning, this whole program is run through Montana Educational Talent Search. This is me here. I am certainly a resource, and my information is on the next slide, so I'll make sure you all have that. The other two large programs for the state of Montana are, one, the Become an Alum program, which some of you may be familiar with. That's a partnership really between the University of Montana and the Department of Labor and Industry at the government level. This program is essentially staffed out of job service, which is great because people come to job service locations thinking about what their different options are. And if higher ed is maybe something they're thinking about, this is awesome because they are connected in with the university and their satellite campuses and can help make that connection. Carol Evanger she's a DLI employee through job service, but is based in Missoula on the University of Montana's campus. And she's awesome, a great resource for students. And people that come to see her, she physically walks them to where they need to go. She's fabulous. And they are setting those up, I believe, in Flathead as well as here in Helena, and there might be one other location, but that is a growing program. But Carol would be a great resource, and if you just Google Become an Alum, you'll get a lot of really great information about that. The other campus network is Return to Learn, which is out of MSU. Oh, good. Thanks, Tyson. Appreciate it. So Miles City, Glendive, and Billings are also going to have those job service folks embedded within the campus with that bridge from job service. Thanks for typing that in. But I know for some of the students that I worked at Helena College here in Helena, obviously, and having that connection to Carol Rule is our head of job service here in town, but having that connection with her made just a world of difference, because the relationship that they build, and then having that hopefully a comfortable person over on the campus side to assist students has been really great. Hold on, I'm going to check this. Oh, great. So Tyson, so anybody who's on the call that might be at over in Missoula, Tyson Kuntz is on here. Tyson, are you okay if you type in your email? And I can share that out here. And then I'll also add that onto the website too, if that's okay. So the other side is Return to Learn. That's over at Montana State, and very similar program in some ways, but again, the main focus there and the main objective is to help students who are wanting to get back into school. And they have a great website. I'd encourage you, if you're thinking about the Montana State side, to just Google Return to Learn at MSU, whether that's at MSU, whether that's at Great Falls College, whether that's at MSU Northern, the different sizes, styles, they can be sure to assist with that. And then there's me here at the state office, who's also just happy to advocate on your behalf or to answer any questions that you might have in regards to just about anything. I've had students ask questions about all kinds of stuff, so don't hesitate if that's if you have questions all the way to housing. How do I get food? How do I have childcare in this new space? We can help get you connected. So lastly, as I keep saying, you can call me. Here is my actual contact information. I unfortunately am pretty addicted to my phone, good or bad, but my work office and every line and everything goes directly to it. So feel free to email if that's more comfortable, or to call. But yeah, and I guess I'll stop blubbering. It doesn't look, I want to make sure I got everything in the chat. It looks like I did. I'll stop sharing here for a sec. Here we go. But hello to everybody that I didn't see. But if I can help in any way, please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out. That is what we're here for. We want to make this a reality for you in a way that you're comfortable. But again, I just want to say thank you for thinking about coming back and thinking about taking that next step. I know it's not an easy one. I was fortunate enough my bachelor's went pretty traditionally, but my master's degree, which I know is different, but life got in the way, and I had some kids, and it can be hard to take that next step. I remember getting my first assignment of having to write a really long paper, and I thought, what am I doing? I shouldn't be doing this. So just know we're here to support you, and we're here to kind of help you through it and to be your cheerleaders. So with that, I'll stay on the call if anybody has anything or wants to jump in. If not, thanks for attending. And again, this is recorded. We'll have it on our YouTube channel and up on our website, so you can check back in at any time. Thanks for coming.